Hi, welcome to the tutorial for lesson 4. In this unit we're going to learn how to make different kinds of charts in Excel. You've probably heard the expression that a picture's worth 1,000 words, and for Excel charts that's what we're trying to do. We have a bunch of data that doesn't really mean a lot to our user unless we can put it in a visual form so they can tell what's going on with it. So I have open a file, practice lesson 4A. You probably want to open that up and follow through these steps with me. We'll be going through everything that you'll need to know for your assignment. So here we have annual sales for a pet shop. And we have our 4 locations: Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee. And then we have our birds, fish, reptiles, and rodents. And the numbers represent sales for each of those areas. So we're going to be making a column chart and a pie chart to better display what's happening with annual sales for the different cities and the different types of animals. The first chart we're going to make is a column chart, and although your data will often have totals, you probably don't want to include these in your chart because it tends to skew your data and doesn't really represent visually what you want to show. So when we select, I'm just going to select just my cities and my animals and my amounts. Don't get in the habit of just selecting a bunch of stuff and expecting a chart to work out. Kind of need to think about what you want to display in your chart. So I don't want my totals because I want to be comparing my different areas against each other, and I don't want this big tall total chart to get in the way. So with my data selected, I'm going to come up to Insert, Column, and there are a bunch of different types of charts that you can choose from. We're going to just go with this simple 2D column chart. And then it's going to pop that in right on the same worksheet. Now, to select your whole chart, you're just going to click on, and you'll have this thick gray border around the outside. That means your entire chart's selected and you can start working with it. First of all, notice that when your chart's selected, you have chart tools that contain design, layout, and format. And we're just going to go through each of these tabs and learn about the different options available within them. The first one, change chart type. If you do a column and you end up not liking how it looks, you can come here and this gives you all of your options again. So if for some reason you wanted to do a line or a pie chart, then you can change here without deleting your chart and starting over. We're going to just skip the Save as Template. That's a little more advanced, but we need to look at the switch row and column. So right now our chart defaulted to show each animal or each city and comparing the different animals. So we know right away that Chicago sold more fish than anything else. We can switch our row and column data, so now it's comparing each animal per location. So just depending on what you want to display in your data, you may need to play with the switch row and column. There's no right or wrong, but you just need to know what you're trying to show. So I'm going to keep it, actually I'm going to keep it like this so I can compare the different animals per location. Notice when your chart's selected, back here on your data you have some different colors and handles. The green is going to represent what appears in your legend. You can see this green line over here, and the purple represents what's going to appear down here across your x-axis, and then everything in blue represents your data. So notice when I switch row and column, now my cities are purple and my legend is green. Okay. If I end up getting my chart and I've forgotten to, maybe I decide I want to display my total, I can just come here with the two-headed arrow and I can drag over. And just notice how that really disproportionates the data I want to show. So I'm just going to scoot that back. So a lot of students, when they're beginning to do charts, get in the habit of just, oh, that's not what I want, and they delete the whole thing. Just know that you can come in and customize. You don't have to start over each time. You can come in and change things. Okay, then I have some different chart layouts that are pre-built. So in some of your assignments it might say choose chart layout 1. So you're just going to hover, you get the little pop-up that says layout 1, and when you click it gives you a chart title. It kind of helps you out so you don't have to add everything in manually. So your different chart layouts change where your legend is and where different things are. So I'm just going to stick with chart layout 1. Then you have different chart styles that change your color up. And there are a lot of different ones of these that you can play around with. So your assignments will probably tell you a specific style that you need to select, and that's just here. Okay, the next very farthest item on your ribbon is to move the chart. Notice that by default our chart just popped right into the same worksheet as our data. Sometimes if you have a lot of data, you don't have room for a chart right there in the same place. So you can move your chart location, and here we've defaulted to an object in sheet 1. Notice down here we're sheet 1. But if we want, we can make this go into a new sheet, and maybe we could want to name that sheet column chart. And when we click OK, down here at the bottom, notice we have our column chart, which now we have an entire sheet for our chart to stay in. And when we click on sheet 1, there's our data. So again, it's just depending on what you're trying to display, how much room you have, and what you want to do with it. I'm going to go ahead and move this back as an object in sheet 1. With the four-headed arrow, you can slide this. With this data, I'm going to be creating both a pie chart and a column chart. So I'm going to have my column chart here and my pie chart down below my data. Okay, now let's look at our layout tab. We're not going to use all of the tools on here. Some of them are a little more advanced, but we'll just go over some of the basics that you'll need to do your assignments. Basically, in your layout tab, you're controlling your axis titles, your chart title, and how your grid lines are going to appear. So first, let's look at our chart title. I've reverted this back from our layout type that automatically put a chart title in. And if I come here to chart title, I can choose a centered overlay, which actually puts my title down inside my chart, or I can choose to do it above the chart. And I'm just going to put in my title. And then I have my axis title. So this is my horizontal axis that's listing my animals, and this is my vertical axis. Although this is pretty self-explanatory, I'm going to go ahead and add some axis titles onto it. So for my primary horizontal, I just want to put it below. And even though it's obvious, we'll just put animal in there. And then my vertical axis, I can choose rotated, vertical, or horizontal. So let's just go ahead and play with all three of those so you can see. Let's do sales in dollars. Okay, so this one is rotated. If I change it to vertical, it's stretching it, stacking it. Doesn't look really good, I don't think. And then the horizontal, just depending on how long that title is, it may or may not work running horizontal. I'm going to go ahead and change mine back to rotated because I feel like that just fits the best with my chart. Okay, data labels we won't be doing a lot with on your assignments, but this will actually pull the numbers here and display them on your columns. So As you can see, it's really messy in this example because our numbers are all 6, 7, 8 digits long and there's just not room. So I'm going to do none, but just so you know the options there, if your data labels are smaller and you really want that to show in your chart, you can put data labels in. Data table is my data over here, and if I want that to appear in my chart, I can go ahead and have that display. Grid lines are your lines here. These are my horizontal grid lines, and I can turn those off if I want, or I can put them back as major grid lines, or if I want my data to be really, I want my user to be able to really go in and see specifically how much things are, I can add my minor grid lines. In this chart, it's just going to look better with major. And then you also have your vertical grid lines that you can show. On this chart, not really necessary. I'm going to turn those off. Okay, the last tab is the one you all like because you get to be kind of creative. Your format in your chart tools is what helps you control your color, your patterns, your fill, your borders, things to really make your chart more original. So when I have the solid gray border around my chart, I'm dealing with the entire chart. So at this point, if I wanted to add a shape fill, I'm going to add it to the entire chart. If I wanted to add a shape outline or a border around my chart, it's going to put it around the entire chart. If I just want fill or border around my title, I'm going to select that so I have the handles. And now that everything that I do is going to affect my title. So I can do an outline, I can play with the weight on that, I can go in my shape effects, make something more of a 3D type of look. So I want to actually go in and apply a pattern to each of these different cities. So if I click my legend once, whatever I do is going to affect the whole legend. But if I click again, now I can just change my data point for Chicago. If I double click, it's going to put me into my legend entry format. Right now, it's just set to automatic. If I want to come in and change the color from blue to orange or something, I can do that here. But again, if I'm not printing on a color printer, it's still all going to look just shades of gray and be hard to differentiate. So I can come into my pattern fill, and here I have a lot of different options. And then if I wanted Cleveland to also be a pattern, maybe little snowflakes. So you can see that you have a lot of control over how you format those data points depending on how you're going to deliver it to your viewer, whether it's printed or a display. You might want to change it up a little bit. Okay, font. If I want this whole x-axis here to be in a different font, I can just select it, have my handle around the whole thing, and then come to my home ribbon. And remember, even though we're dealing with format, you're not going to have your font options here. You can change your text and add some outlines, but if you want to actually change the font style, you come back to your home ribbon and then you can pick a different font. Okay, I can also grow my font here or select a specific font size. If I want my X, my horizontal title here a different font, I can go ahead and do that. Make it bigger. And back on my format, this is where I can change my word art style. I can add text effects if I want. I can add an outline of different color. Okay, I think there's one more thing I need to show you how to do so you can do your assignments. And for that, I'm going to go back to the Layout tab. I want to add a text box up here in the corner just to highlight something that's happening in my chart. So I'm just going to go to text box and I get this little funny text entry, and then I can say, I don't know, maybe I just want to say something's really cool. I can go ahead and size this, move it where I want with my four-headed arrow. And I actually want to say that it's really cool that Chicago sold so many fish. So I want to draw an arrow to this bar right here. So I'm going to select my whole chart again, go to Layout, and insert a shape. That's an arrow. When I come back and I hover around where that text box was, I have different anchor points where I can draw that arrow to. So I want it just coming from this side one. And then I'm just going to drag my mouse and point my arrow to there. And notice this little dot there, and it just looks professional. I can click on my arrow, I can go in and I can change the color of that. I can change the weight of it if I want it fatter. If I decide I want it pointed to something else, I can hover over this dot with my two-headed arrow, and maybe I think it's really cool that Detroit sold a lot of fish, so where they sold the most birds. I can change where that's pointing. Okay, I think that's all you need to know for the column chart, which will be the first part of your first assignment. The second part of your first assignment has you building a pie chart. So I'm going to just stay on this same data and we're going to build a pie chart. When we did our column chart, everything we selected was adjacent. We just selected this. It was all touching, easy to select it. If we tried to do a pie chart, let me just show you what a mess that would be. If we selected all this data and we tried to make a pie with it, it's not really showing anything beneficial. Well, it's showing birds, but notice I selected all of my animals, but it doesn't know what to do with it. Pie charts are not good for showing comparisons of many things at a time. They're good for showing comparisons of one thing at a time. So for this pie chart, I actually just want to show all of my animals, and then I want to show their total comparisons. But these aren't adjacent cells, so when I try to select this over here, it deselects my titles here. So to select these non-adjacent cells, I'm going to select this first column first, then hold my control key down and select my second column. Then I can come up and insert a pie chart. I'm going to do a 3D pie. And then that's just what I wanted to show, was the comparison of totals for all the different animals. So it's really easy to see that rodents were the least, fish were the most, birds and reptiles were kind of about the same. If for some reason your pie, you're sure you've selected everything correctly and generate your chart and it looks funny, come up to the switch row and column. And for pie charts, there's only one way that works. So if your chart ends up looking really weird like this, come up and switch your row and column and see if that helps it look like it's supposed to. Okay, I have all of my same tools. I want to select Layout 1 because I like that it gives me a title, and then instead of a legend, it's got my labels on there. And I'm just going to do total annual sales. Okay. Just like with my column chart, I can go in and individualize each slice. So notice when I click once, I have handles around everything on my pie. If I click again just on the fish slice, now I just have handles around that slice. Then I can double click and go in to format just that data point on my fill. If I have a black printer and I need to have some kind of a pattern, then I can go in and change my color, my pattern, and so on. That's really ugly, so I'm actually going to undo it. Okay, the other thing that you need to know on your pie is how to explode a slice. And my junior high kids think this is always really cool, and they have their pie exploding all over the place. You explode slices on a pie not just to make it look like it's blowing up, but to emphasize certain sections of it. So in this case, my birds, rodents, and reptiles are all kind of the same, but I sold a lot of fish. And maybe I want to really emphasize that that's really cool, that so much of my sales are made up of fish. So I just want to explode that slice or pull it out a little bit. So there's two ways you can do this. You can just do it manually. And I do that by having my slice selected, and then I'm just going to click and drag, and I can pull that slice out a little bit so that it's separated and it calls attention to that slice. The other way that I can do it is with my slice selected. I can go to my Format tab, and I'm going to just format this selection. Here, it gives me an explosion option. So if my assignment says explode the specific slice by 40%, I can just drag this, or I could type in the numbers, and then it's exploded by exactly that amount. Okay, I think that's everything you need to know to do your column and pie charts. Oh, actually, one more thing. Your assignments will say to save it so that it all displays on one page. So if I were to go in right now and do a file print, it's just showing my pie chart. I can't submit it this way. So I need to come back to the home and make sure nothing is selected. My pie is not selected, none of my charts are selected. And I'm going to go back in to file print. Still can't see everything. So the first obvious thing is to change my orientation to landscape. Okay, almost. It's almost there. Then I'm going to change my no scaling to fit the sheet on one page. And this is how you need to submit it. You're not going to be printing anything, but once you have it so it's displaying all on one page, you're going to save it and then submit it electronically. And that's the end of the chart workshop. Have fun with this. Some of the assignments let you be creative, some are really specific, but just keep in mind what you're trying to show and have fun building with these. Good luck.